I'm Elisa Mencarelli, journalist from Elle, Decor, Italia. And thanks to our designer, our guests, Omayra Maymò and Muñoz, and mostly and especially thanks to Interior from Spain that made this project, this talk, this exhibition possible. So for this reason, now I leave the stage to Pablo Conde, ICEX director.
Thank you very much, Elisa, for your presentation and your kind words. For me, it's a pleasure to introduce this talk with two great designers from Spain. As you are here in the Apartamento Españolo, where we have 18 brands that with lovely designs and lovely products, but the Spanish companies have really disembarked in Milano this week. We have around 100 companies exhibiting all over Milan, more than 40 companies in the Salone. Here 18 in the Apartamento Españolo. We have with tiles from Spain in the Statale. We have 16 companies in an exhibition that is called House of Mirrors. That is very nice, and you are welcome to see it. And I hope you enjoy the quality of our design and our designers, because they are getting more and more renowned worldwide. And here you will have the example of two great designers that will talk about their work. Thank you very much, Elle, Decor, and thank you, Lucas and Omayra, for being here with us.
Thank you, Pablo. And now a very short video to introduce you Interiors from Spain. Thank you.
Spain is people and companies, brands and experts, business and trust, innovation and creation, content and communication, determination and influence, art and design, creators and builders, inventors and makers, knowledge and progress, research and specialization, technology and development. Beyond that, Spain is spaces and places, Japan or USA, Berlin or Dubai, colors and diversity, sustainability and resources, exploration and discovery, lights and shadows, landscapes and skies, big and small, touching and feeling, listening and watching, future and past, tradition and evolution, silence and noise, lifestyle and passion, because Spain is you, us, them, and me. Spain is here. Spain is now. Spain is in.
Great. So, as you have seen in the video, this is a moment for us to, have an overview on the Spanish design scene from the point of view of the brand, as here the exhibition by Divois, but also through the lens of the makers, the designer that really shaped the design scene. And yesterday, our editor-in-chief, Livia Peraldo Matton, hosted another talk on the theme of the light with Hector Serrano and My C Studio. And today we are gonna investigate the importance of materials through the lens of Omayra Maymò and Lucas Muñoz. So a brief introduction on them. Omayra Maymò is an architect and designer working with furniture, lighting, and object, through which she explores the narrative and emotional potential of our material world. After a long period in Copenhagen, where she founded her design studio in 2016, she currently lives and works in Madrid. In addition to her work with industrial products, her more speculative projects, which often result in unique experimental pieces, make up an important part of her work and approach. And Lucas Muñoz works in the field of art and design through craft and travel. His work is mainly based in Madrid. His practices explore redefinition of the functionality and material of use objects, spaces, and engineering. Working now with his hands, a field that intertwines the need for use of our daily life artifacts with the capacity they have to carry and embody meaning from a creative and critical approach. So I start with Omayra. We have a presentation showing better her work. And the first question that I have to her is something that I found extremely interesting about your practice. So the wide range of materials that you have used in your experience, in your career, and the availability and the capability that you have to apply those materials on different scale of products. So from the industrial world to the real experimentation. So please tell us about all these souls of your practice.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, and hello to everybody. Thank you, Elisa, and thank you, Ethex and Elle, Decor Italia, for having me here today. It is a pleasure. So yes, indeed, I work with a very wide range of materials. It actually depends on every project, really. As I always say that every object is a little unique story, and every time I take on a new story, I like to explore new ways and new processes and new materials. And that's actually my favorite part of my job, when I get to experiment hands-on with the materials. And because I think through manipulating them and through testing things with them, you can learn a lot from them. It's almost as if they were speaking and they were telling you what they want to be and how they want to be. And for me, this process of experimentation and from learning from the process and the material, for me, this is the richest part of design. And yeah, I do work in a wide spectrum of scales of production. So I very often work under brief for companies within the industry, creating designs made for large-scale production, like the Porta Lounge chair to the left that I designed for the Spanish brand Omelette Editions. But I also really like to work on more conceptual or experimental projects that often result in unique pieces, like this pedestal named Malta One that I designed for Heineken, and I created it recycling the barley waste from the beer brewing process. So I really enjoy working in this spectrum, and I try to use it to my advantage and try to challenge the industry from within. So I often search for ways to merge these apparently opposite frameworks. And a good example of this is my project Pleat. It is a project, it is a picture in stainless steel, and it's manufactured by the Danish brand New Works. And as you can see, it looks very simple, but there's actually a lot of research behind it. Its main singularity is that the shape of the picture has not been imposed on the material, but rather it has resulted from a careful material manipulation in which a certain freedom was given to the material for it to wrinkle, following its own will, and therefore releasing the beauty of the natural deformation of steel. It was actually a part of a larger project in which that resulted in these three families of objects. And I was experimenting how to introduce uniqueness in industrial design. That is to say, how to create different outcomes from the same process, serial manufacturing process. And it was all about questioning the aesthetic model based on the perfect and the standard that our material world has been subjected to for the past century. And And in a way, I wanted to also claim the beauty and the value of the imperfect and the unique. And the reason I was doing this is because I wanted to create more meaningful and more personal objects that could stimulate stronger emotional bonds with the user and therefore expand the object's lifespan, which I think it's the ultimate sustainability. So I reflected on how the industry applies 100% control of the whole process to create exact replicas from the same object. And I realized that what I had to do was to reduce that percentage of control and introduce a percentage of freedom. Freedom given to the material for it to behave in its own way and to partially decide its own shape. So I experimented with many materials, actually, and many techniques. This was a very long experiment or project. And I ended up choosing to work with metals. I was really inspired by them. And through many months, I got to learn them. And once again, as I said before, it was almost like listening to them and hearing how they wanted to behave. And the way I accomplished this finally was by creating my own set of tools and my own set of industrial techniques that would allow me to give this freedom to the material, because it was not something that was done in the industry. So I had to create my own new way of manufacturing. So I created many tools. They all can be used in any standard metal factory. So they could be produced anywhere, and the process could all be done by machines and still result differently every time. As you can see, like the first tools were very rudimentary. They were very elemental, but they evolved into something a bit more precise. There was utopian version for pleats in which it could potentially be sold with its tool, so it would be the owner who would shape the picture and therefore strengthen even more the emotional bond between the person and the object.
Yeah, that's another layer of handcrafting. I mean, not only crafting pieces, but also the tools.
Yeah.
And that's great.
Exactly. Like we have the power to, as designers, we have the power to design our material world, but also the tools and the way they will be built. So, but anyway, this option was for sure very too utopian for the industry, so it didn't even happen. It didn't end up happening like this. But so this is a project that speaks about the necessary balance between perfect and imperfect, and between freedom and control. And it is a project in which the formation of perfection is praised to the point of being the most fundamental part of the design. And it was my way to try to challenge the industry to approach more human ways of manufacturing and to create more meaningful objects.
Super. And another aspect that I find particularly interesting in general in all the designers and practice, which is the geography. So in what way the area you lived in, the area you work in, the territory, the culture, the traditions influence your work, and especially you that you have lived between Spain and Denmark, that seems so far away, one culture from the other. So how these influence your work?
Yes, so I did live in Denmark for many years, for 6 years, until I started my way back to Madrid, to Spain in 2020 to start my own practice. And I am very aware that Denmark was where I changed design scale, right? So I turned from architecture to object, and it was where I became a furniture designer. So I am aware that getting to know the Danish tradition in depth has really shaped the way I work. I do think I share many values with the Danish tradition, such as working with what is essential to the object, maintaining an honesty of materials and construction, focusing on the quality of the craftsmanship and the materials and paying attention to the little details. And overall, I think relying on the beauty of simplicity, and which I think is a good recipe for timelessness. And speaking about all these values and how geography can affect design, and trying to circle back also to different ways of working with materials, I thought I would talk a little bit about this project. It's a stool called 1927, and it was part of a bigger project that I was invited to participate in, called Kilometro Cero. And this was a project that was born out of the movement restriction of 1 kilometer radius that we had in Spain during the easing of lockdown. I think you might have, I don't know if you had something similar in Spain, but during the easing of lockdown, we could only move with 1 kilometer for many weeks, 1 kilometer from our homes. So a group of designers was invited to participate, me among them, and we were invited to create a piece using exclusively the resources found within that 1 kilometer radius. So during my walks throughout the easing of lockdown, I discovered the work of Juan Sanchez, who for the past 25 years now has run the Esparto Grass shop that his grandfather opened in La Latina almost a century ago in Madrid. And I was really inspired by his craftsmanship and his know-how and the way he preserves this ancient trade. So I decided to collaborate with him for this project, and I thought I could design a stool and he could help me build the seat. So as I had to build the stool in my living room alone using the very few tools I had at home, I decided to keep the structure and the construction very simple. So I decided to use only one element repeated. And that's also why I chose to take inspiration from Rietvel's do-it-yourself philosophy and the still movement, which was coincidentally becoming popular in the Netherlands at the same time as in La Latina. Juan's grandfather was opening the Esparto Grass shop in 1927. That's why it's called like that. It's the link between both. And so I took inspiration from this Cartesian joint that Rietveld created as one of the simplest shapes, simplest ways to join 3 wooden battens. And I decided to reinterpret it for my structure. So I work with wooden battens and almost quite instinctively adding parts to reinforce the structure until it was stable enough. So once again, I only work with what is essential to the object. Everything is necessary, and there's nothing that the object could exist without. Speaking with Juan, we decided to use this material called seagrass, which is a very traditional material used for, seeds and backrests and other crafts. And so he built the seed following my guides, but using his wide know-how in working with the seagrass. And so this is a project that is completely determined by its geography and its location. So its design, its construction, and its materials are defined by the location and the precise moment in time when it was created. And it is a project that speaks about cooperation and adaptation to adversity and preservation of crafts.
Thank you, Omayra. Thank you very much. I will get back to you later. Now, Lucas, it's your turn. We have a presentation even for him. Let's wait for you. And I want to follow the last question that I did to Omayra, even because your practice is strictly connected to nature, sustainability, reuse, recycle. So, again, in your practice, how important it is to look at the local researchers, the territory, what is the local culture?
Well, first of all, thanks, and nice to be here, and beautiful presentation, Omayra. Really enjoyed it. I truly believe in territory as and contextual distance as a source for resolving the projects. and for looking to the projects. I mean, in the end, the most honest will always be transforming what is on site, right? And if we look to history and we look to cathedrals and the construction, how we used to build for thousands of years has always been totally informed by the context and by the proximity and the social know-how of the place, no? The genius of the place, right? So in my practice, and well, this is probably the best example of this, is the restaurant Movimiento that we developed in Madrid, and it opened just before the pandemic in 2020. It's we tried to transform as many elements as possible from the construction site into the new space. So it was a kind of like a metamorphosis of the space transforming itself into a new space, right? So as you can see, that produces a unique outcome that cannot happen anywhere else. And that's what I find very interesting, that when you transform what is on site and you mine from the local context, it's impossible. There is no other catalog. There's no mood board for it. It just happens with what is there, and you have to take from the possibilities of the space, right? So, for instance, all the lights that you see hanging around in the space, we could not find lights in the space, so we said, okay, let's find secondhand and let's find things that are going to be thrown away. So we reached some recycling centers and we started making some calls, and we found that we could get some of these TL light cases and then refurbish them and actualize them with LED lights, right? So in the end, what we got is what we got. So we got 16 of this model and 8 of the other model and 5 of the other model and 1 of the other model. And then look into the technical drawings of the plans, or look into the spaces, like, okay, maybe we can, as you see here, on the left, you see the column has tied ones, you know, so there were 2 columns and we had 8 lights, so let's tie the 8 lights to the columns, but then let's make pyramids with 16 lights, let's make 2 inverted pyramids. So it's designing from what is available, it's designing from scarcity, not from abundance. Not everything is possible, it's just possible what you have on site or what you can find like in this case, the TL lights. This is very beautiful because we also refurbished all these lights working with an association that works with kids in risk of social exclusion. So it's called Norte Joven, and it's and what it does, it trains, it gives them a craft. So there's the electronic workshop and it's the wood workshop and so on. So for this project we collaborated with the electronic workshop, and they refurbished and rewired all these lamps for the restaurant. So with the same economical investment, we also found that we could do a very good social impact by diverting this process through this social foundation. So, and then, okay, we get all of these, and many of them had already TL tubes inside, you know, so it's like after refurbishing them and wiring them with LED lights, suddenly we had an abundance again, scarce but limited, of these tube lights, right? Dead ones, many of them. So then what we did is this chandelier that it's made with all the dead tubes that we collected from the lamps that we used on the columns, and it's in the same space. So you see that some things deconstruct and then reappear in different places of the space, right? So in the end, this is not that the tubes are working only as a shade, because the light is LED lights on the bottom and on the top, which is the cutouts, because when you buy LED lights, they come in 5 meters, and then we need to put 1.20 meters or a meter, depending on the ones that we rewired, these ones. So we had always a cutout of 10 centimeters, 15 centimeters, 20 centimeters. So all of those is what composes the light panel on the bottom and the light panel on the top of the lamp, right? So, and then the construction is very, very simple. Now you see it on the right, it's just these quick connectors, electric quick connectors, and we found that you could create a rhythm of 3 and 2 and 3 and 2 by connecting the 2 pins with these quick connectors, electric quick connectors, dominoes. And that's, you know, like one thing leads to the other. So already the sheer object is informing you of how to continue its own structure, right? Also, like during the construction, this always happens, right? You create this rubble, and then we wanted to work with you know, like try to reduce as much as possible the outcome of leftover material from our intervention in this space, and rubble was something that we needed to deal with. So we ended up collecting all that rubble, construction rubble, so basically broken concrete, in bags, and until we found the solution. So we were moving the bags all around, which is kind of like a painful thing to do when you're in construction site. But eventually we came up with this easy way to recast it. So we re-encapsulate concrete rubble in concrete. So we're not creating a bigger problem. It's still, we're just reshaping the material once in a new shape. So every day for 6 months during the construction work, we would create 2 of these tiles. And then eventually we recycled like 2,000 kilos of rubble into all the benches of the space that you see. You see the lines of benches of the space. So we created all these tiles, and that material didn't leave the space. It just found a new shape. It used to be a floor, and now it was the benches re-encapsulated, right? There is also, as you see, those big terracotta closets hanging from the wall, right? So that's an invention that we developed in the studio, and it works the same as these big vases that you see on the left, and they are both like a take on air conditioning. So basically Madrid is very dry and very hot, so again the context is very important. And there is a property of temperature and temperature exchange that is called a diabatic exchange of temperature, and it means that when a very dry and hot air, like the one in Madrid, gets in contact with a humid environment, it loses its temperature very fast because there is an exchange of humidity. So and that's something that I didn't discover. It happens in Arabic constructions like La Alhambra, for instance, and many other places in northern Africa, and especially dry and hot climate. And what we did is we encapsulate that into these elements, and what they do is that they suck air because they have a fan on top. So hot air tends to go up, so it is sucked into the through the ventilator into the vase, and the vase is humidified inside. And then this hot air is going to dry the inside and then lose temperature, like between 7 and 10 degrees. It will go down the temperature, relative humidity will go up. So also making it more comfortable, because too dry is also uncomfortable, right? So then on the right side of the space of the photos, we can also see like these orange trees. These were saved from Valencia, because they were cutting in Spain. They're cutting a lot of orange trees in the east. We used to have a lot of production of oranges, but now it's much cheaper to bring it from South Africa. So we wanted to make like a heroic gesture, and then go to Valencia, take 9 orange trees, bring them to the patio, and be able to tell this story. Like all the craft of oranges and all the olive groves are disappearing because of the price of collecting it by hand, right? So every single element of the space has a concept and has a story and has a narrative, and that's a bit how I like to work also. I'm way more interested in the why and the how than in the what. So things like these orange trees, which also it's traditions of the orange patios, of the Arabic constructions, of the inheritance that we have in Spain, and so on, right? So in the end, it's like every project, it's very improvised and it's very intuitive, and it takes a lot from the context, but then afterwards we try to make some theory out of it in the studio to understand why things work and how can we transmit and translate those. So in the end, what we are seeing here is like, okay, we are very used to say that we have to move from linear to circular, right? But then what we thought is like, well, this circle it's flat, but what if it will cross, if we elevate the circle in 3 dimensions, then it will cross different planes, like X, Y, Z. So, and then with the same energy, like this circularity is like, keep the energy, keep the economic world, feeding itself with its own materiality, and it's very important, circularity and sustainability. But what if we twist that circle, and then we have a social impact and an educational impact? Because in the end, the social is the problems of now, and the educational is the problems of the future. So if by investing the same energy and the same amount of economic investment, but you also try, like with the lamps, you try to also with the same investment also have an educational impact and also have a social impact, you are also helping in creating projects that do push a different way of thinking the way we construct. And that I have been doing also, like this is something I tend to do. I like to make things out of the market. So sometimes I travel around, and I was in Shanghai visiting a familiar, and then I will take one day out to make an object, just collecting trash from the street and then making an object and then leaving it there. and it disappears. Somebody takes it, always. So what I do is I 3D scan it, and then I have all the 3D scans on location in different places. So this was in Shanghai, I have one in Seoul, I have one in Ronda, I have one in Madrid, I have one in Milan, I also made one. So it's like, I just take a day out to make an object, and I make an object that it will never reach the market, and it's only responding to the materials of the context. So it's like, you go for a walk, you find trash, and then you assemble it in a way that it works. And you leave it there, and it will never, nobody knows who is the maker of that, and nobody knows the value of that. It's just out of the market. And I did the same in Thailand also, in the middle of the northeast of Thailand, and this is in Royet. And this is because I was filming a documentary film about some Buddhist monks that work, that have rocket workshops there. They fly amazing rockets into the sky, and we were fascinated as an object and how do they do that craft. And that was like collecting all the trash, like to be thankful to these Buddhist monks. We were living with them in the temple for 6 months. And to be thankful, I wanted to give something back, right? So I was collecting all the trash that I could find around the temple and then assemble with the techniques I learned from them of, making knots and joining and so on, how they construct these rockets, so their craft. I learned that and then implemented it in this object that I gave back to the community. And the same way happened also in Supply Seoul, which is a gallery in Seoul. I was like in traveling around Korea, and then started collecting in this neighborhood, this is craft neighborhood, starting collecting the trash from the local makers, and then packing it like they do, because Korean do have a very sophisticated way of packing objects. When they, every time they sell something, they pack it in a very nice way. So what I did is collect their trash and pack it with their nice packing technique to create all these kind of like collection of furniture, right? But it's not only trash found on the street, but it's also like industrial objects and products. So this is like using ventilation system pipes. And it's, I started with the pipes found in front of my atelier. They changed the ventilation system, and then I found like all these pipes on the floor, and I found it really beautiful. And that lamp on the right is the first one that came out, because I found it was like a very primitive shape somehow. But then that lamp got sold, and I had to make a few units. And then when I bought the elbows, this piece, the connector to make the lamps, I had 20 of them suddenly, and then it's like, I can make a chair with this. So I didn't make the lamp, I made the chair, right? So I had to buy the elbows again to make the lamp, and then I wanted to make a small chair, so I ended up buying some of these pipes, and then it ended up being a shelf. So it's once you have the material, you start playing, and then you start creating these shapes, right? Yeah.
And yours is a very virtuous practice, but something that I would like to ask is, what is the biggest challenge? Not only the technique, so like making new way of reusing materials, but also when you say that you collect materials, sometimes the biggest issues come when you have to deal with institutions. For instance, when you made the restaurant, which is a public space, which is a huge project, I think that you had to deal with other actors in the sectors. So where is the most difficult part in those projects?
Yeah, of course. I mean, when you are dealing with a very experimental practice and you're proposing something that is out of the possibilities of a catalog or out of the possibilities of common, of what is called common, it's the most difficult thing is how to make it purely functional, how to be really, like satisfying the needs of the space, and also how to make it safe, right? Like all those air conditionings, we had to go to look into the legal system, and also for public spaces and breathing and quality, and that was just before COVID. So imagine and find like examples also of all the places that have used these and how that has been controlled. So in the night they have a chloride cycle that cleans all the walls of the ventilators, right? But in the end, it's a huge collaboration. I mean, the only thing you need to know is that you need to know who to ask. You know, you're not going to have the answer, and internet is not going to give it. But there are a lot of experts to ask, right? So I think the first big step is like, okay, I can be creative with everything, but in the end, I might need to know the questions and know somebody to ask and have the right answers, and not try to improvise a creative solution for everything. So for the restaurant or for the other projects that I do in interior, it's always a collaboration in between what the legal side of it, requires, and also on the other hand, how creative can we be within those that legal framework? And sometimes it's on the limits, and sometimes it's out of the legal. For instance, in the restaurant, we parasite the walls of the pizza oven with water pipes. So all the hot water of the restaurant is a remnant heat of the pizza oven. So with that, we have our own source of free energy inside of the restaurant, because the pizza oven has to be delivering pizzas and it has to be always hot. So what we did then in the patio, there is floor heating, and that's forbidden in Spain. You cannot have floor heating in an outdoor space because it's a loss of energy. But because it's a remnant heat of our pizza oven, then it's not a loss of energy, and then it's not illegal, because it's just a side kick of something that is happening somewhere else. So we're not consuming energy to heat up the patio. So it's probably the only outdoor, hot, warm floor patio in Spain heated by energy.
Thank you, Lucas. And now a couple of questions for you too. So something that came up in my mind, especially now that I'm in the other part of the field, so I'm a journalist. What happens the most of the time in your practice? What comes first, the material or the project?
Well, first of all, beautiful presentation. Your work is really inspiring. So, well, I had never thought about that until you popped the question, and I think because I work very often under brief for companies, then the project comes first. They ask for a certain typology, and often they will suggest a material that they are familiar with, or they will say it needs to be upholstered or whatever. So in those kind of projects, the concept comes first, and then I think about the meaning that I want to, the object to carry, or the feeling that I want it to convey, and then I find the right material for that purpose. But when I work in more, independent projects, more conceptual or experimental, certainly the material comes first, and it is a big source of inspiration. So, yeah. I don't know if that answers your question. It's a little bit both. But I have managed to, because I worked for 4 years in Copenhagen in a Danish brand called Firm Living, and I developed many designs for them, and I actually managed to introduce a few material-driven projects. So when you are within the industry, you can challenge it a little bit and switch it.
No, in my case, it's clear. I find material, I think context.
Then the last question, the most difficult one, I think, was the future of materials.
Well, I mean, the future of materials is infinite. It's our future, which is not infinite. So in the end, I think like mining, mining the city, mining the junkyards. That's in the long run, it should be the future. And I envision like bots doing that, and then classifying by and structing, because there's I mean, I don't know. I read this information the other day, and I was flashed. It's like every single toothbrush you've used in your life still exists. Yeah. So it's like, if that's one thing, imagine all the other things you have seen in your life. Every single object you have touched still exists. Every single material you have been in contact with still exists. So there is, from my perspective, it's like that's such a richness. There's so much things out there that just needs to be reinterpreted and revisited. And maybe we need to think this as a film and not as a photo.
Yeah, I think the same. What I would say is like inevitably the direction we need to head it's towards sustainability and but also circular economy. So not only try to use local materials and sustainably extracted, but also keep a circular mindset. So try to use as less materials as possible and try to have as less material extractions as possible. So that is, use as many recycled materials as possible, and then try to optimize consumption so there's not much waste. And if there is waste, how can we turn that waste into raw materials again? And also think like, how can we design the object so that if a part is broken, we can repair it and we don't have to discard the whole object. And again, if the object reaches the final of its life, or the end of its life, how can we separate the parts to maximize recycling? So all of these things are I think, well, we just saw it in Lucas' presentation. He's a good example. So I think that's the way to go.
Thank you. Applausi.
Okay.